Hi guys, welcome to another video. This time I'm going to show you the Boss Tone fuzz pedal I built. So quite a while back I actually made a video about my very first pedal that I built, which was a delay pedal. It was a Musikding Blu-ray delay pedal, and that video was actually quite a huge success. Back then I said that I wanted to build a synthesizer, and that was the reason why I wanted to get into all this music, electronics, DIY stuff. And by now I have actually done that already, and I bet quite a few of you are subscribed to my channel now because I have done a video about my Eurorack modular that I built myself. After that video, I got a lot of questions about how to start with the DIY stuff. I mean, I gave a brief overview in that video already, but my main recommendation is always to start with guitar pedals. And the easiest guitar pedals that are out there are fuzz pedals, because there are only a few parts in them that need to be soldered. They're just very good beginner projects, and if you want to start on this journey of building music stuff, then I would definitely recommend a fuzz pedal. Even if in the end you want to build a synthesizer, guitar pedals are still a very good option because you can also plug synthesizers in them and they sound pretty cool like that too. So they're very useful. You can plug pretty much anything into guitar pedals and they're gonna be really good effects. And if you have lots of effects pedals, then you're already set for effects, even if you then build a Eurorack or whatever. Basically, it's something that you grow with, and then later on you can still use it for all the other stuff that you might build. It's just a really good way of starting out, and it gives you easy, attainable, small projects that you can manage, and it's a really good way to start. Just a little disclaimer up front: if you clicked on this video because you wanted to see guitar playing or something like that, that's not what this channel is about. I'm not really a guitar player. I use my pedals for other stuff. I use it for different instruments, sometimes for guitars too. I definitely use this one for guitar too. But I'm not much of a guitar player, and if I play guitar, it's only going to be ambient swells most of the time. So keep that in mind. This is really just about the build and how I make music. You can expect ambient music. That's the kind of thing that I normally make, but not guitar stuff. That's not what my channel is about. There's one guitar video on my channel though, which is a Mustang mod, because I do play guitar for swells, and if you're interested in that, you can watch it there. Now, the fuzz pedal that I chose to build was actually a pretty random one. I was just browsing the Musikding website, where I usually get my guitar pedal kits, and they have really cool projects, and they have lots and lots of schematics on there too, so it's a really good resource even if you don't buy their kits. I was looking for a fuzz, and this one seemed interesting because it was just very simple, and I thought it would be a really good video to make, to show people how easy it is to build these sorts of things. It's a very simple pedal, so it's not a very intimidating project, and it's actually an interesting one. The Boss Tone is by a small company originally that did something completely different before getting into guitar pedals. They were somehow involved in the nuclear testing in the Pacific, and later on they built stuff like Geiger counters and things like that. I have no idea how you go from Geiger counters to guitar pedals, but there's probably an interesting story there that I would like to know, but I couldn't find out really. The original pedal didn't really look like a guitar pedal yet. It was more of a little box, and I thought it just looked very, very interesting as a historical piece, and it was so simple that it would be a very quick build, and that's why I chose this one to show you. All this nuclear stuff is actually quite interesting for me because I come from a bit of a nuclear family. You see what I did there, right? Sorry, that's really stupid. It's actually true. because my grandpa used to work for the Wismut, which was the uranium mine in East Germany. And then part of my family is also from Ukraine, and yeah, we also have stories where my dad had this really great idea to go mushroom hunting in the forest like a year after Chernobyl.
There has been a nuclear accident in the Soviet Union, and the Soviets have admitted that it happened.
He didn't find any. Good thing. And to round things out, my husband is a nuclear physicist by training, so after I found out that this was a nuclear pedal, I actually changed the enclosure a bit, added a tiny bit of detail because I just found it cool. Isn't it pretty? Such a nice color. This time my painting job isn't quite as horrendous as it was with the last pedal, so I'm improving myself here, but I still haven't quite figured it out completely yet. Yeah, and the color was sort of accidental in a way, because I bought a cadmium red, and with the white primer it doesn't really look like red, it's more like a salmon color. It looks a bit radioactive, so that's quite fitting actually. I'm embracing it. It kind of looks nuclear, so I like it. Building these pedals is always the same process really. We start with the PCB board when you're building a pedal, and it's always the same thing pretty much. You start with the lowest components, like the resistors, and then you build your way up to the taller components. Normally after the resistors you would put in the IC sockets for chips, but this pedal is so simple it doesn't even have that. So in this case I just went on with the capacitors. And that was it already. It was super fast. The most involved part of this build was the wiring. I had never done a foot switch like that before. Normally the Musikding kits come with this little PCB for the foot switch, which makes it a lot easier. In this case I had to do the wiring to the foot switch directly, and that took a bit more time. It was actually the longest part of the build, and it was a bit fiddly, but it was pretty easy anyway. Definitely something that any beginner could do. I think it's very hard to mess this one up. It's really a super simple pedal. And the good thing about the Musikding kits is that you even get a picture of how the wiring is supposed to look like in the end, the board with all the components, so you really can't go wrong. After I finished building it, I of course tested it, and it worked right away. Of course it was very simple. How much electronics do you actually need to know to build this? Well, I think pretty much none. It's painting by numbers. You just have to put the components in the right places. If it says R1, you look which resistor value is R1, and then you place the component and you solder it. The hardest part is the soldering, and that's just a matter of practice. So it's really not something where you need to know anything about electronics, or no, you don't. It's painting by numbers, so it's very simple. So you don't really have to be afraid that you're gonna turn into a nerd by building a guitar pedal. You don't have to learn about electronics if you want to build guitar pedals. There are tons of schematics that you can use that are really easy to understand, and PCB boards that you can buy, and it's really not that hard. You can still be cool and be a musician, that's fine. If you're intimidated by schematics like these, then you can of course skip this part if you don't really want to know how it works. But I promise you it's really easy to understand, so there's nothing to be afraid of here. The way a fuzz pedal normally works is through these guys here. And also here. These are called transistors. Transistors are basically lo-fi amplifiers that distort and clip relatively easily. This might seem a little cryptic at first, but it's really very easy to understand. I mean, what's going on here? The signal comes in here, goes through this transistor, then goes along further into this transistor, and then it goes out. We also have two pots. One of them is the attack here, and the other is the volume pot here. And this just controls the volume that comes into the circuit, and this is the output volume. It's really very simple. The only thing these transistors do is to amplify the signal. This one amplifies the signal already, and there's already going to be a little bit of distortion. When it reaches this transistor here, the signal is already so loud that it will clip when it comes through here. And that's what creates this fast sound. So it's just amplification, amplification, and it comes out. There's already quite a lot going on in this one, which is a big muff. And here you see there are actually 4 transistors. This already tells you that there is more distortion going on here. This will be a heavier effect than the boss tone. And if the boss tone is a bit too mellow for you, then something like this is probably a better idea for you. There's of course more going on here and here, but if you look at this and this stage, they look like exactly the same thing. So just 2 times the same thing that boosts the signal even more. And this is how you read schematics. You see those little blocks of things that look the same, and then you can interpret from this what it does. It's really not that hard to understand, and all the details here you don't necessarily have to understand yet. With fuzz pedals, it's only really relevant how many transistors there are, and you can use this knowledge to figure out which fuzz you might want to build. Eventually, you will basically pick up how to read schematics and that sort of thing by accident along the way. It's really easy, so you're gonna figure out what the symbols mean and so on just by building 1 or 2 or 3, 4 of these things. And I'm gonna promise you're gonna build more than one, because it's just so easy and a little bit addictive, because you're gonna have this success very easily and you're gonna want more. I have built quite a few of them, and I built this entire modular, so it's really something that is a little bit addictive and might threaten your wallet a little bit too. Luckily, guitar pedals tend to be quite cheap to build, so there isn't really that much of an investment involved. That's why these are really good starter projects, because if you mess it up, you're not gonna ruin a potentially expensive Eurorack module or something like that. You're only gonna mess up a board that costs like €4 to replace or something. It's really not that hard, and you don't have to worry about blowing anything up. This is of course not the only fuzz pedal that you can build. There are tons of different fuzz options also on the Musikding website. I've already built another fuzz pedal, which is the companion fuzz, and that's a bit more involved, but really not an awful lot. It has a scooped mid, it's also quite interesting. There are tons of options from which you can choose. If you don't like the sound of this particular one, you can choose a big muff, for example. That is always very popular with the synth crowd. There are tons of different options that you have there. Fuzz pedals are really very cheap and simple because there's so few components on them. It's a really good way to start. I was playing around with it on the guitar a bit, but I'm the kind of person who likes to put all sorts of random things through my guitar pedals. So I tried different things. I plugged my Crave in it, for example. And then I thought, why not try something really wild, and why not put my steel tongue drum through it? And I actually made some music with it in the end. I played around a bit and then built a track around it in Ableton. Of course, when you put something as wild as a steel tongue drum through a fuzz pedal, you're gonna have to put some effort into it to tame it a little. I tried a very simple sequence so that it wouldn't get out of hand too much, and I built most of the complexity around that in the DAW. I was also just noodling around a bit, so things were not on the grid. I didn't really pay attention to the metronome, so there's still some stuff that is a bit off the grid. I didn't nudge it around too much, only the transients, and then I left most of it still off the grid to keep it a bit more natural. That's something I like to do, to mix things up a little, to have strange rhythms that are not entirely on grid. And then of course there's also a bit of pulse stretch in it, and my favorite plugins, which are Pure Magnetic plugins. They're really cool. I really like those. And I just played around until I found something that I liked. Of course, everyone has their favorite plugins, and I definitely gravitate towards the Pure Magnetic stuff. And I also really like Heinbach's wires. I use lots of different plugins that usually came with my audio interface. Focusrite usually has this thing where they have new plugins coming out every few months if you have one of their devices, and I have quite a few. I have a launch control, I have a launch pad, I have an 18i20 audio interface, and they all come with licenses for plugins. They have a really cool selection of plugins, and I started out with those, and those have become my staples. The Pure Magnetic plugins that I have here in the list, those were the ones that at some points came with my Focusrite, and by now I have a few more of those too. They're really cool plugins. The way I normally work with Ableton is to mess around in the clip view and come up with variations there. And then when I have something that could work and has enough elements, I tend to play it in live from there with the launchpad and the launch control, and then just put all the finishing touches to the arrangements after that. That's the way I normally work. I don't like building tracks on the arrangement view. I just find it too tedious most of the time. I like the hands-on experience of just playing it in, getting timing right and so on. I often also do stuff with follow actions to bring a bit more variation in, and yeah, I just have my workflow with Ableton like everyone has their own workflow, I guess. My Launchpad is actually one of my most used pieces of equipment in my studio. I use it on practically everything. I use it for writing things in Ableton. I use it when I use my iPad too, because it has a standalone sequencer. It is the Mark III, and this sequencer I like a lot. I use it also with my modular, and yeah, I'm pretty impressed with the Launchpad. It's very, very useful, and I've used it on several albums by now, so it's really cool. I would recommend it. So that concludes my first track written in the new studio. And it's something really wild with steel tongue drum through a fuzz pedal. Who would have thought? I mean, when you clicked on this video, did you think you would hear a steel tongue drum in this? I'm not so sure, right? Well, I like to try unusual things, and that's definitely unusual. So where do you go from here after you've built a fuzz pedal? You can of course build something more complicated, like for example the delay pedal I built. You can check that out here. I really like that one. I've used it on a lot of different tracks by now, and it sounds really cool. I really like this. It sounds very analog, so it's a really good option. You can also build more complex fuzz pedals or distortions or overdrives or something like that. I'm gonna build a big muff soon. I've been wanting that for a while, so I ordered one of those kits, and that's gonna come up eventually. So you can build your way up from there, or you can also go with something more difficult, like for example a phaser. That's also really cool. The phaser is actually something that I would recommend if you want to go into the synthy direction, because phasers are also something very synth-like. It's an effect that originally came out of the synth world and only then came into the guitar world from there. And that's definitely a good pairing with a synthesizer if you want to go in that direction. There will definitely be a video about the phaser pedal that I built, and that's gonna come soon. And then from there you just build your way up to more difficult projects. There are all sorts of different things that you can build. Synth pedals and bit crushers and all sorts of cool, strange things. That's really cool too. And then eventually you can even build synthesizers if you're into that sort of thing too. That was my goal with all of this. And I've by now built lots of synthesizer modules, and yeah, this was how I started out. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. It really helps out my channel, so I would really appreciate it. You can also support my channel on Ko-fi or buy my music on Bandcamp. These projects have a tendency to get out of hand and become quite expensive, like when you build an entire modular rack, that gets expensive. So any support helps to keep the videos coming and the modules coming and so on, so that I can show you more stuff that I built. But of course the liking, the subscribing, the commenting is already more than enough. It's just there's an option if you want to support what I do. You can definitely expect more videos like this one. I have tons in the works. I actually left the camera running for my entire modular build, and also for all the other pedals that I built. So there will be more videos like this coming where I show you my pedals, and yeah, you can follow along and maybe also start on your own DIY journey. Anyway, I hope I see you soon for another video. Bye! Pretty. Chakotay! Ah, I love my new studio. It's so nice.